Morning, everybody. Very nice to see everybody this morning. What sort of morning is this morning? It's a green tea, green Javelin morning. So green Javelin is from Yunnan province. I know you all have your notes from last week when we did Char, which is from southern Yunnan province, because today, by the end of the session, you're going to have a really good idea of the differences between a very wide range of teas. So last week, you remember what Char was. So this week, this is different for the green Javelin. Two different places, two different terroirs, and two very different taste profiles. So we'll do that. Before we get involved, let's do all the housekeeping that normally I'm supposed to do. It's written in my script and I never do because I'm understudy. So that means I'm lazy. Well, this morning I was instructed not to be lazy. So for cameras, please in general, govern those very carefully. So when you're not in the room where you are viewing this, remember, if you take your cameras anywhere with you and don't turn them off, then I'm going to see the whole layout of your house. And so is everybody else. So just
tea thieves.
Tea thieves. Yeah, and most importantly, tea thieves. Yes. So we don't want to reveal to tea thieves where we're stashing this very, very valuable commodity. No being blindsided. All right. So I had further instructions this morning in addition to following the script. I'm supposed to reduce use of long words today, which means moving a little bit outside of science and getting somewhere else today. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I have this instruction. Where am I going to go? Culture. I love culture. Chinese culture, tea culture. So we're going to have some combination of a discussion on that this morning as well. And then by the end of this session, you should know the difference between large leaves and small leaves on a gross scale. So let's go ahead and march right on into culture. And usually I talk about incidents in the tea shop during the week, and not so much incidences, but occurrences of stuff that occur in the week. And this last week, we had a great occurrence. We had two new people, and yet they weren't new to this shop. They'd never been here before, but as they were driving up from somewhere deep in the bowels of Southern California, they talked to their friends in Portland who said, I don't care that you're on Highway 5. You get yourself over to Montclair Village and you go to this tea shop. And so they made this detour. And this is part of a group that meets regularly in Oregon. And they've got a tea master up there. And they have discovered the hidden, not all the hidden treasures, because really we have so many. It's a little bit like trying to discover all the hidden treasures in a computer game. It's just very hard. We've got a lot of treasures, but at any rate, they came here and experienced some treasures and bought some treasures to take back to Oregon. So that was fun. It was fun to have strangers come right in and say, oh, I'm from this studio in Oregon. And right away, I knew, oh, we're not in the starter board anymore. We better get ourselves right away to something special because they're going to bring back special gifts. to their cohort up there. So that was fun. So let's talk about buying habits. Not so much American buying habits, but this contrast with what you all know are the generalized buying habits here with buying habits in China. And this is all tied to culture. And by the time I'm finished, you'll see how this all knits together or crochets together, depending on what you're doing. And when you think of purchasers of this level of tea in China, who is buying this and why are they buying it? So generally speaking, China as a shopping community, when they're getting gifts versus self-usage, are thinking about a couple different things. One is they're thinking about brands. Now, why in the world are they thinking about brands? Is it the same reason we think about brands here? Actually, it's really not. It's because of their close network of personal and business relationships, and it has to do with face. So you have two concepts, and those are distinct concepts. The concept of relationships, interrelationships with your various cohorts, and then how you are perceived within those relationships. So relationship and face. So for the best teas in here, would most consumers in China, who, by the way, that's who we're competing with when we pick these up, buy these teas, and under what circumstances? So those who want to be perceived as, or are trying to show a certain status within a relationship would be buying these teas. And they'd be buying at the upper end of these teas. Does that mean that they themselves would buy it for themselves? Many cases, the answer is no. Many cases, especially if they're not in the tea industry, are not tea hounds. What is a tea hound? It's not a new breed of dog. I'm glad you were wondering and starting to think about, oh, I better check this on the internet. No, these are people who we would label as tea aficionados, people who are so interested in looking for that next great taste experience. They're also buying these very special teas. And they're not buying for brand recognition purposes, they're buying for taste purposes. The brand recognition purposes are buying so that when they give the gift, the recipient will know, oh, I'm loved, I'm treasured. And therefore, the relationship is preserved. So last week's tea, Chara, belongs in the relationship type of tea. And that's one of the reasons so few people have drunk it, aside from the fact that very little is produced. But those who know of it, generally speaking, don't want to open a package of it lightly because they're thinking, because China is connected by relationships, right? And they're thinking, okay, how can I advance myself within a network? Well, you give Chara. And that's one good way, and it's recognized. So that's one of the main reasons, if you're not independently wealthy or if you aren't high in a food chain, that you might buy at this level, that is, the Chinese consumer might buy at this level, and then use it as gift. Now, today's tea, green Javelin, fits more of self-usage. Okay, it's a good gift to give, but it's less expensive. So that's something that Okay, I can drink this every day. I don't have to worry. And you know what? I'm going to save the chara. I'm going to save the balance. I'm going to give those as gifts. So that's part of the thinking, which is a little bit different than the thinking here. And again, it's driven by cultural concerns because Asia is more or less collectivist in terms of approach to things. In other words, they do lots of things together. They build lots of relationships. And I shouldn't have said it the way I just said it right now. And I was trying to be more inclusive, but in fact, what I did was became too inclusive. Because if you ask me, okay, the Tibetans are Asians, do they think from the same starting point? Or some other indigenous group is Asian, are they thinking from the same starting point? And so the answer is obviously no. So what I should have said is Han Chinese, Koreans, and also Japanese tend to think and be concerned about these issues. That doesn't mean that other groups aren't concerned about these issues, but these things play a really primary role. And this is developed historically because let's refresh our memories. When did tea start to be drunk? Well, if anybody says to you, well, it was in the year 118 before the Christian era, look them straight in the eye and say, now, what's your proof again? And the answer is they will have no proof. And unless they find it on the internet, then you have the best proof possible, right? Because the internet never makes mistakes. It was roughly sometime in the Han Dynasty that tea became a drink that was enjoyed. So when is the Han Dynasty again? 200 BC to 200 AD, roughly. Yes, I know I didn't quote the exact dates, but that's the rough period of time. So roughly during that time, tea was developing as a pleasurable drink. All right. So then during the Three Kingdoms period, 200 AD, and afterwards, how was tea starting to be developed and used? Well, it was started to be as a gift because, gosh, this thing tastes good. Nice to give as a gift. And remember, I asked you this. Were they giving cliff teas at that time? It's a trick question. The answer, of course, is no, because cliff teas hadn't been invented. Although you could technically ding me. How? Wait a minute, John. This means that teas weren't growing in northern Fujian province at that time? And I have to answer, you got me. They were being grown, they were just being processed as green teas. So by the Tang Dynasty, so remembering the Tang Dynasty is somewhere between 618 and 960, rough dates. In the Tang Dynasty, this became an art of giving tea as a gift. So let's back up a minute and let's make sure that I don't make you ultra thirsty. We have, at that time, fully developed philosophies. And they're going to continue to develop over time, but we've got Taoism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Now you can call it philosophy, you can call it religion. I safely just place it in philosophy. So for the Taoism, what was their relationship with tea? They were linking nature and self because the Taoists were all about two things. The first thing is, give me immortality. Let me find that substance which will give me immortality. And by the way, number two, I want to be in connection with nature. Those were the two main things that they were focused on. But what about Buddhists? What were they focused on? Did they care about nature? Well, in a way, they cared about the nature of man with their own mind, the spirit, trying to reach down into the spirit. And that's how they used tea. They drank tea in order to calm themselves so they could reach down and find that quiet point and find that place of truth. And then you had Confucianists. Now, Confucianists had things like the golden mean. What does the golden mean mean? Basically, that is everything is hierarchical. You got the gods up here, you got the emperor who's getting all the information from the gods. Then you got the officials, the father, and blah, 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 all the way down the rest of the way through society. And everybody has their place, everybody has their role. And so how was tea related to that? It was related to that very distinctly, especially by the Tang Dynasty in terms of gift giving. Because if you gift gave a very nice tea to somebody, this was showing where you were in that hierarchy. And so there was all three philosophical traditions were deeply, deeply ingrained in tea drinking. And all of them had their varied purposes for doing that. And you can see that in a way, tea was a lubricant between all three philosophies. Didn't always work all the time. The Confucianists and the Taoist battled sometimes, Confucianists and Buddhists battled sometimes. But in the Wui Mountains, as I've talked about before, this was one of the only places, and that, by the way, now what I'm saying is supposition. So this you won't find on the internet. It's because the tea up there was so good. And how can you battle when the tea is so good? And there's enough for everybody to go around. So you had three different traditions. And the relationship of gift giving developed out of this Confucianist hierarchy. When you give gifts, you establish where you are within your network. And that collectivist thinking has continued to this day. So this was just a little cultural aside. I know I've made everybody extremely thirsty, and the numinous tea master is already signaling over talk, over talk, over talk. So without further ado, it is my wonderful pleasure to bring the numinous tea master up here, and she will demonstrate green javelin, and then she will brew along with you. So without further ado, numinous tea master, can I have your presence, please?
Hey, good morning. 早上好。We do not volunteer. We do green tea. Sorry. It's yeah. Green tea 呢 so from Yunnan it's called 大叶种 green
yes.
Javelin.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
What she just said in Chinese was 大叶种, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too. What that means is large leafed. And we'll talk specifically because I think I promised you at the beginning, by the end of this session, you know something about the differences between large leaf and small leaf. So that's why she made reference to that. So she's got her tableau set up. This one is 175-degree water. This is large leafed, and it comes from the Linsong area. Actually a little south of Linsong. And so what she's doing is dissipating the steam.
What is the big flyer wasp in the photo? Are those wings in the leaves and nectar? What's up?
Yeah, big fly or wasp. That looks like a murderous wasp, doesn't it? It is actually, yes, a very large bee, very large. And the reason I included that was I know that it doesn't seem to relate directly to tea, but at this particular area where we got this tea, they invited us to a meal. And in that meal, it was a plate full of those things. So what was my thought pattern when I first saw those? I'm thinking to myself, by the way, she's cooling down the water. I'm thinking to myself, because they said, oh, it's perfectly safe to eat. I'm thinking, famous last words. How many times have I heard, oh yeah, this is perfectly safe? And so what I'm really thinking to myself is, what if they forgot to remove a stinger from one of those? Now, I'm observing the surroundings around me. There's actually a hospital within 10 minutes of where we were having this meeting. So that was the first thing I was thinking about. Because, and by the way, this is bag number 2, green Javelin, and you're watching and listening. You're not actually brewing. 4 grams, puts it in.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, yes.
And for viewers watching this after the fact, these are photos that Sophie's Cuppa Tea sent out to participants ahead of time to give them a sense of, to give y'all a sense of, better sense of the area.
Yes, and I apologize if those came out this morning instead of yesterday. I had a technical glitch yesterday, so the result was it took me a little longer for a workaround. And in fact, one of the photos is a mistake, but that's okay. Not the one with the bee in it, and that's what we're talking about. So there was a plate full of these things. I knew there was a hospital within 10 minutes. I had actually some local officials at this banquet as well. So my thought pattern was, let's not let my facial expressions reveal any fear or any hesitation. Let's just act like I've done this 1,000 times, because I know that in China, it's very bad manners to cause the officials, the local officials, pain and aggravation. So I thought, if they are actually going to get a spoonful of these, I'll take a spoonful. And it's like, hey, they eat it. Why can't I eat it? So I did eat that, but I present to you that as evidence of what was served. And by the way, those of you who went with us to Yunnan did not see any of that stuff, because you know what? Xiaomei and I have been going back and forth to China for so many years that nothing totally surprises us. You, on the other hand, who came with us, I think probably would have felt some of what I actually felt, and may have been more vocal about it than I was. I was zero vocal. I just did what I was supposed to do. So at any rate, she's put the water in here. Take a look at these leaves. You can tell that these are mostly buds, and they're big buds, and they almost look like they're not green tea. So this is one of the reasons, by the way, that if you ever see something like this in the market, first off, you won't see it of this quality, but we have seen stuff that's lesser quality, and it's labeled the following way: white poor. Now let's see, white poor. What in the world is that? That sounds like an inventive name, meaning I don't know what this is. But if I put the word poor beside it, nobody will question me. So I think that some of the people, and actually we believe we know the source, and everybody's protected, so I'm not going to name the source, but we believe we know the entire source of name and where the stuff that we see on the market is coming from. And it's incorrect, by the way. It's green tea, it's processed as green tea, not processed as white tea. All right, Tea Master separates the tea liquor from the tea leaves, and we're going to get ready to enter the quality arena. So what do we mean by entering the quality arena? We're going to ascertain mouthfeel, we're going to ascertain aftertaste, energetics. We're also going to smell these beautiful leaves.
Question for you. You and Bay this morning said the first brew was 3 minutes, but your website and email said 2 minutes.
That means that the website astoundingly is wrong, since that's always right. And that also means that my email was wrong, understudy error, that's normal. And since I did the website information, that's normal also. So sorry about that.
So
Should be
3
3
minutes.
minutes. Yes,
3 minutes.
3 minutes. My
3, 2,
apologies.
3, 2,
Yeah,
2.
322 is what it
Yes.
should be. All right. Oh, and that's rare among green teas that you can have 3 steepings. So last week we had one that you can have 3 steepings. This week we also have one that you can have 3 steepings. And again, I apologize for the inconsistency there. All right, let's enter the quality arena. Take that 175-degree sip. Cover the tongue, trying to detect dryness, wear, seeing what sort of an aftertaste there is. Energetics, by the way, comes over time. It can, for some people right away, for some people it takes time. So don't worry if you're not feeling when you do this energetics right away. Okay, I've ascertained what I believe is what are the quality characteristics of this. I have ascertained some preliminary taste profiles and some preliminary aroma profiles. It's your turn now to go ahead and brew. Okay, so you're going to draw your 175-degree water, you're going to dissipate the steam, and you'll see why in a minute. Even though we're calling out 175 as the pouring temperature, you'll see why by dissipating the steam and maybe entering slightly cooler, it's not a problem, but I'm not going to spoil the surprise for you. You also know that when you're doing this, you're making sure that both cups are heated, because when your leaves come in contact with the heated cup, this is the first opportunity to wake them up, so to speak, and start the process of understanding what this is about, what this particular tea is about. And you notice she drew a 3rd cup out there. That's to speed the process. You don't have to do that. You have 2 cups only, that's fine. Inserts tea leaves. Shakes them. Smells them. And that's the one.
What's the difference between the buds and leaves?
So what's the difference between the buds and leaves? Well, buds, the leaf buds are constituted such that they contain the leaves. So over time, they open more leaves. The leaves have already sprouted from the buds. And this is a great question because it's going to lead me to talk about one of the big differences between large leaf and small leaf. So large leaf is mostly from Yunnan province. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who woke up late and just got on the broadcast, this morning, before the broadcast, I also sent you a map of China where tea grows. And this is useful to give you a generalized idea. And the authors of this map actually separated it by region. So this is Southwest China. Look in the left quadrant and Yunnan province is there. Most of the tea that grows there is very large leaf varietal. Now, if you go north and east, you'll see lighter green. And the lighter green area will be Zhejiang, Anhui, Hunan, and a bunch of others, a few others, one or two others. And those, for the most part, are small and mid-sized leaf. Sichuan, which is north of Yunnan, has both large and small, more small than large. So if you're thinking about leaves and buds and so forth, let's do a generalization that'll be helpful to you. On most buds, whether they are large leaf varietal or small leaf varietal, you'll find these white hairs. What are those things again? Trichomes. Trichomes contain chemicals, for the most part polyphenols, that when bugs bite, they don't like and they go away. So it's a plant mechanism to get rid of bugs. As the leaves open, they always open with some number of trichomes on the bottom of the leaf. So the top leaf, leaf number 1, will always have more trichomes than leaf number 4. How do I know this? Because uniformly, leaf number 4 has 0 trichomes. All right, your timer has gone off. You're going to separate the leaves from the tea liquor. And when you look at this thing, you're going to see it's very clear. Now, I actually had one person bring back the cup of tea and say, oh, you forgot to put the tea leaves in. No, it brews that way, and it brews that way on purpose. So you're going to enter the quality arena. First thing you're going to do, though, is smell these leaves. And right away, you get a surprise. Because when you smell green tea, do you ever smell anything like this? Rarely. And then you're going to take that 175-degree sip. You're going to coat your tongue. And you're going to start to tell me what sort of quality this tea has. Not in a hurry, take your time, because this is not an easy exercise, especially when something is so different than what it was last week. So again, we've done this, and there's a bunch of stuff in between, but these are really the 2 guideposts on side to side. Yes?
Smooth.
Smooth. Oh, I love smooth. Yes, very smooth.
I'm not detecting hay or grass on the wet leaves. It's more like a malt.
No hay or grass on the wet leaves, more like a malt. Love that comment. And as you go tasting, you'll understand why. So while you're thinking about this, I'll tell you a little bit more about large and small leaf varietals. So in general, large leaf varietals. So remember how I started this in general. If you find one or two exceptions, it wouldn't surprise me. But in general, the large leaf varietals have significantly more catechins than the small leaf varietals. Ah, go ahead.
Tastes more like a yellow tea to me, says a participant.
Oh, you know, I really like this comment for an unusual reason. So the commentator says it tastes more like a yellow tea to them than a green tea. And the reason I like this comment so much is some of the yellow teas. So think Old Gold, think Golden Disc. They have that sweetness to them, which comes right up and just seems out of place. It's that unusual. And I believe that the commentator really is making that type of comparison.
The participant says there's almost an appleness in the scent of the tea liquor.
Love this. Commentator says there's an appleness to it. So this commentator isn't talking about a Granny Smith apple. This commentator is talking more like a very nice golden crisp, the ones from New Zealand apple, which has that freshness, not a tartness to it, but a sweetness to it. Yeah.
The wet leaves smell like grassy molasses.
The wet leaves smell like grassy molasses. You know, the reason I'm laughing is because it makes me think that what I should do after the broadcast is to cut some grass up, roll some molasses over it, and taste it or smell it. I get the comment, by the way, because that comment is related to even though the other commentator said no grassiness or hayness in the aroma, but malt. It's the malt / molasses. And you are smelling a little bit of grassiness under that malt / molasses. Love the comment. Good comment.
Another note, maybe a sense of cinnamon on the apple to the quality of the scent or taste. Let me back up. The scent, maybe a sense of cinnamon to the scent reminds him of other teas that gave him a similar sense.
So this commentator has or detects a hint in the scent of cinnamon, which reminds the commentator of other teas that they've experienced. And I get why everybody's moving, or a lot of you are moving in this direction, because the underlying, and this is why I like the apple comment so much. Right away, what you're saying to me, and also actually the grassy molasses, you're saying to me two things. You're saying there is definitely some fruit, and you're getting a sense of a warm fruit, and you're telling me, yeah, and it's got a heavy sweetness, not excessive sweetness. That's not what I'm talking about, but a molassesy, malty sweetness, a sweetness of a viscous brown sugar.
Another comments that if we move from the very delicate grassy scent of the dry leaves to the broth aroma, which is fresh with a tinge of sweetness. And there's a juicy sip and a smooth swallow.
So we move from hints of grassiness and lightness in the dried leaves to actual broth of freshness, hint of sweetness. What did I leave out?
And then let's see, we have the smooth swallow, a juicy sip.
That's right, and a juicy sip. I love all these, and I particularly aim at that juicy sip because this sweetness, this implied sweetness in here just makes you want to keep drinking. This is one of those teas that if you were sitting with somebody and talking with them, you would consume it in 6 minutes and 30 seconds. And by minute 8, you'd be looking at your cup. You'd smell your cup. Wow, that's got a hint of malty sweetness in it. I don't remember, but it was really good and I drank it fast. Because without tea rhythm, it's that good. It just, and the first commentator who commented, smooth, mellow, just so easy. And you add juicy, and then you add home cooked cinnamon apple to that. How can you not drink this fast unless we're having class to go?
Another note, yes, the taste is smooth, gentle, delicate, comforting, it goes down very easily.
Goes down easily, says this commentator. Smooth, delicate, gentle. Absolutely. There is nothing hard. There's no amount of having to search your imagination with this tea. This tea is right there, and it's really good right there.
Astringency seems to surface further into the cup.
Love this comment. You know, and I didn't want to give this away when I first took my quality sip. It's like, wow, there's very little astringency in this. But even as I'm drinking along with you, more of it's building up on my tongue. And I have much more of a drying now than I did when I started.
A commenter detects the taste of apricot in the tea liquor and then apple on the scent. So apple on the scent and apricot on the taste buds.
So I love this comment because it's about elusiveness. It's not elusive at all that there's fruit, flavor, hints of fruit, aroma, and flavor. But what those are and how to nail those down are hard. Because this commentator said, on the scent, give me the apple. On the flavor, give me the apricot. So you have this range that's hitting your senses. And again, I ask you this. When's the last time you drank a loose leaf green tea or horrors, even a tea bag of alleged green tea, and had this type of commentary? Answer would be never. This is what's so unusual about this. And this is why when this was presented to us, how long again did it take us to make a decision? 1 blue nanosecond. Yes.
The commentator notes in checking his notes, he found that the taste reminds him of spring exhalations, a red tea.
I like this comment. So this particular commentator went back into his archives, checked spring exhalations, and found that this reminds him of spring exhalations. So how in the world might this remind one of spring exhalations? Well, we've mentioned the reasons. Hints of spice, a warmth to it, and a hint of apple in the initial scent profile. So spring exhalations always is about hints of spice, whether it's cardamom of cinnamon or a hint of clove. You never taste that tea. You never hear anybody taste that tea and not start there. Here, we very early on caught a hint of a spice here, cinnamon.
Another commentator detects more of a raspberryness in the aroma of the infused leaves. So the wet leaves, sort of a raspberryness, giving out a sweet and tart quality. She also notes there's a sort of umami that's more subtle with green Javelin than with Chara.
Love this comment. So the commentator evaluated the wet leaves and said, from their perspective, it's a hint of sweetness and tartness together, just like a raspberry. And so everybody's circling around this because they're talking apple, cinnamon, so a hint of sweet and spice, molasses, okay, some sweetness there. And then in the actual taste itself, hint of umami. And I like that because typically, for most green teas, at some point when you're drinking a green tea, frequently you get some sense of umami. Although I would say for me, it's not much in this compared to others. But that's making a comparison. It's not saying that there isn't umami in this. There is. It's just comparatively speaking, I get it stronger in other green teas. What's covering it up are all the things that you're talking about. Hints of fruit, hints of spice, the juiciness. All of these things are pointing you away from, oh, don't look at me, I'm not really green tea. And that's what makes this thing so interesting. Yes.
It's so funny. And the commentator said this is a green tea in sheep's clothing.
Ah, love it. So a commentator, I beat the commentator to it. A green tea in sheep's clothing. Great comment.
Could you share about the processing?
Yeah. So what is the process? This is an early spring pick. Since it's in Yunnan, the spring pick is actually at the end of February, around the 25th or so. This is a bud and a leaflet. So what do I mean by leaflet? It is the first leaf starting to come out. So it's a bud encased in that first leaf. And so predominantly you see buds, but you see little hints of leaves, and in some cases where the leaf is actually come out more full. And in Yunnan, they tend to be less careful and less uniform than other places. You would never see this type of inconsistency in, say, Anhui, in the fine teas that they do in Anhui, because there they've got so many people working on, I want every single one of these things to look a certain way. Whereas here, it is, give me the majority in a certain way, and if a little bit extra comes out, we'll just process it. But it's not an issue because the way they process it, okay, so I didn't finish the processing. They pick, they quick Johnny, bring it in and wither short. And then they use high heat and kill the enzyme, the oxidation enzyme. They don't do any particular rolling. It's much like, I better not make that comparison. Let me back up. They do very little rolling. What little rolling they do is while they're actually pan frying it. So it doesn't go through an additional rolling step, and then they bake it to get it down to the correct temperature.
So you said that the heat kills the oxidation enzyme, or is it the green tea enzyme?
So, good. I'm glad that you all are paying real close attention. First off, I use the murder word. That's incorrect, isn't it? And you called me out politely on that. So let me use the technical term. Now, since you brought this up, I can use a long word. It denatures both the green tea enzyme and the oxidation enzyme. Both are denatured, and they're both denatured at the high heat level. So great question. I thank you for that one.
Participant notes that the tea liquor is a little cloudy. Is it trichomes question mark? More cloudy in green Javelin, while Chara was more clear in her experience.
So this is a good question. And from our perspective, we believe we see more trichomes in Chara than we do in green Javelin. But it doesn't matter whether it's more or less. Both of them have lots of trichomes. And this has lots of trichomes because what again? It's a bud, and buds have a tremendous amount of trichomes because remember, this is the vault. What's in this vault? 5 leaves. Therefore, you gotta have a lot of protection around this vault. All these devices to distract and make the bugs think, oh, this is ugly. We can't eat this stuff.
Are both Javelin and Chara a bud and 2 leaves?
No. So the question is, are both green Javelin and Chara a bud and 2 leaves? Green Javelin, as I said, is really a bud with a leaflet, and that's not a word. Let me do this correctly. It's a bud with a small leaf already showing. Occasionally, they don't catch it in time and it grows up to be about half the size, and even another little one will show, but that's not the intent. The intent, when they pick, the pickers are instructed, give me a bud and a leaf that's encapsulating that bud, just coming up. All right, so you still haven't, oh, I did give you some of the differences between large leafed varietals and small leaf. Let's wrap up all of those differences. So I've just left you with the idea that the large leaf varietals are richer in polyphenols. Small leafed have fewer polyphenols. So I ask you this, if something has more polyphenols, what must it have less of? Amino acids. If something has many more amino acids, it's going to have fewer polyphenols. So one of you is already thinking, and it's going to spread through all of you in a minute, well, what would cause a leaf to have more amino acids? This one's pretty straightforward. So when you're in colder climates, when you have real winters, the leaves develop more amino acids. Remember, look at that map again. That map says Yunnan is in the southwest. And in the southwest where it is, it's subtropical and humid and warm, and winter there, oh my gosh, winter there is like winter in Hawaii. It's very nice. It's very pleasant. But that means you're not getting as many amino acids. Instead, you're getting more of the polyphenols. Some other technical things, and these aren't things I expect you to remember, and I'm just saying them just to show off that I know. The big leaf, the actual thickness of the big leaf is surprisingly thinner than the thickness of the small leaf. And so again, that's part of several things. It's not only part of the growth cycle, it's also part of the soil terroir. And so you have these generalities that you can take to the bank 95% of the time. There are a few exceptions, but by and large, this is always going to be true when you look at size of leaf. And let's think about this among stuff that we know. So let's think about loquat companion. For those of you who've had loquat companion, a green tea from Jiangsu province, The trichomes are huge, which means they're not large in size, great in number, which means that it's mostly and can only mostly be leaf buds. You get some of these other teas and you have few or zero trichomes, then you know that you're drinking further down the branch, or not the branch, the stem. So that's a fun thing to check and see if when you go into, when you're stuck in some foreign country and you have to go to another tea shop, you can, check out and see how good the tea purveyor is by asking a few of these technical questions. Ask them the difference between large leaf and small leaf and see what inventive answer you get. All right, so we've almost come to the conclusion. Loved going through this because, as I said, today and last week were about providing guardrails for green tea. We got Chara on one end, and we have green Javelin on the other end. Green Javelin is so unusual because it's got hints of fruit, it's got hints of sweetness, hints of malt. You can go through all the other green teas, and none of them bring this combination to the bear. Yes.
Suggested food pairing?
Suggested food pairing. Well, what I would do is make sure you have adults and kids together. This is a tea that kids will end up enjoying. Now, if you have adults and kids together, that means you've got to have kid food. So some light cookies would be just wonderful with this tea. All right, so we've done these two over weeks 1 and 2. Next week, we're going to get evocative. And evocative is going to give you yet another feeling. It falls between these two, and we'll have fun doing that next week. In the meantime, you have assignment for this upcoming week, big assignment, and that is to make sure that you stay healthy, because lots of this, whatever it is, in fact, now it seems like it's more than one thing, is spreading around. Let's be careful. Make sure that we eat carefully. And we'll talk more about Chinese herbs next week as well, because there is some relationship between all of these things. I don't want to start down that road now, otherwise, 30 minutes later, when's it going to finish? We'll avoid that. So again, have a great week. Look forward to seeing you next week. You take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.